Welcome to our new podcast of Casuals and Counters. You're joined by myself, Will from Casuals Corner, and Leo, who you may know from films such as A Casuals Guide to All the Weight Classes. Incredible content. We're here to chat everything MMA, what we're up to in the MMA world, and also some fights with you. So let's not mess about. Leo, talk me through last night's card, the main sort of topic of conversation. Let's get stuck into it. Kai France, Al-Bazi. Tell me what you saw and what you made of it.
We're talking about the main event,
We
yeah?
are
You want
indeed.
to start from the top? Okay. Robbery is a term I don't really want to use because it was a close fight. But I think when you actually have to look at it, that fourth round, I was looking at the stats. Kai France had 27 strikes to 5 and a takedown and still didn't get the round. And I think that just needs to be put in question. I think that was the round that decided it, and obviously two of the judges didn't give it to him, and we've seen it too often where that's happened. And I saw a tweet from Ariel Helwani saying about interviewing judges after fights to justify their reasoning, and I think that's a complete. I'm on the fence on that, but I think I do kind of see the point. I think that's not a bad option because they need to be held accountable because everyone gets held accountable except from them, and they're able to leave without any criticism. Any backlash, and I think that's not right when it's these guys' livelihoods at stake. You know, there's money involved. I think that's really important for the integrity of the sport.
Yeah, you've got a lot on the line as well. You've got their careers, you've got the time they've spent away from their family, the other 50% of their paycheck. There's a lot on the line every time these people are making these decisions. And I thought for the first time whilst you were talking there, is it a possible case of where judges are not scoring a round after the round's happened, sort of leaving it blank, forgetting about it, moving on, the next round started, whatever it may be, and then they're trying to, from memory, write down scores from last rounds? Because I've seen some that, similar to that, where it's been so crazy to me that I can't ration it any other way. It doesn't make sense to me. Do you see what I'm saying?
I mean, I think, yeah, for sure. But I think a lot of it is down to, because they changed the rules, you know, obviously it's now focused a lot on damage now. So I don't know if that's a transition thing. Judges are getting used to that, maybe. I'm not sure. Maybe it's unclear. And I know damage takes priority. That is the number one rule, you know, now. And you look back to like the one that comes to mind for me is the Sean O'Malley, Peter Yan fight. I had Yan winning that fight. I haven't watched it back. But,
that's the key, though.
See, yeah. The key. A lot of people say that have changed sides now, saying that O'Malley's won it because of the damage, and so that's an interesting case. And we're starting to become I think we're entering a period where grappling doesn't seem to be as effective, or at least I thought, but apparently not, including to last night, because you know Kai France was outstriking him, but a small portion of control time from Al-Bazi is apparently giving him the round or two on the scorecards.
What did you think of his skill set? Where do you think his ceiling is in his division? I expected a little bit more. I thought he was a little bit inactive. And obviously you can talk about the cardio and maybe stamina, but particularly in the fourth and fifth round, he slowed down a lot. Every one punch he threw, Kai was throwing 2 and 3. He was doubling up that jab. I just wasn't enough from him. And I think the grappling was good, but it wasn't. And he was close on that choke, but I don't think he entered that. I think he maybe because for both of those guys, it was the first time they were fighting. They fought, went into the championship rounds, and I think maybe there's a bit of apprehension there early in the rounds for cardio wise, preserving their stamina. I don't know. I expected a little bit more. I don't think he deserved that win, and I like the guy, but if he really wants to step up, I think if he fights a guy like Moreno, I think how Moreno on the feet, his output is the same with France. They're very fast. Constant. Moreno is cardio is notoriously good. We saw that against all these Figueiredo fights. So I think he needs to level up a little bit more. Maybe it was a case of a mental thing. But what I will say in Al-Bazi's defence is what I will say for him is the level and step up in competition was so vast, and that's no fault through his own, but he's gone through decent names to Kai France, who's been a mainstay in the UFC for the longest time and who's a very skilled fighter. He's gone in there who's particularly hard to keep down, to keep in one place, to get
a dominant position over and attack chokes. He's notoriously good at defending it. He's had some very good people in very bad spots, and he's dealt with it very well and very calm under pressure. So, first big main event for Al-Bazi, I think there was going to be a bit of an adrenaline dump, a bit of a trying to manage the gas tank. So although it was a close fight, I think at least he definitely proved his skills definitely belong there. And that's quite exciting because that's another guy who trains in London when he's around here. In TV Top Team. Quite a few of the boys there were rooting for him. So that's an exciting prospect as well. So let's have a look at the rest of the card. One person that I wanted to bring up that we have to talk about, Jim Miller. Jim Miller.
Mate.
It was a performance. It was one of them, and it's easy to say in hindsight, but it was one of them where I felt as if I was questioning the committee that allowed that fight to happen, because
it was short, to be fair. Short
notice.
And the fight was short as well.
And the conversation around age and how many fights and all is irrelevant with Jim Miller. Jim Miller
for sure.
hits so hard, and now he's just getting so clean and just efficient with what he does and his energy expenditure. He's just knocking people out cold, and you just chuck a Bambi in the organisation.
Yeah, I think
I felt like we were feeding a kid to the lions, and the other fella had quite a few fights as well. It was pretty brutal. What do you think of it?
Yeah, the thing is it's quite interesting when you get a guy who's never fought in the UFC before, because they're generally an unknown, right? So that can be, either you're going to get a situation like that where it's not even close, as you said, it's like a lion, lion getting fed, or it's, or you could get someone, who's unproven. One that comes to mind, the guy who fought, I can't remember his name, the guy who fought Terrence McKinney and just sparked him with that knee, and it's out cold, and it was a big. Was that his name? Yeah.
Problems.
Yeah. Yes, that's it. Yeah. So he was quite unknown, and I could be wrong in saying that's his debut. But,
it was his debut.
Yeah. So putting him out cold like that, Terrence McKinney, no slouch. Nearly finished Dober, of course.
Terrence McKinney.
So that's there's a bit of a risk there, because it can go one or two drastic ways. So I actually I like the appeal of getting a new guy in on short notice, because it gives them a chance to really step up, especially against a veteran like Miller. But obviously, it doesn't always go that way. And I think that's
sort of leads us on to, you're talking about upsets, you're talking about debuts, you're talking about shock wins. This is statistically the biggest shock win, because Jamie Mullarkey went from the biggest underdog on the card, the Guram Kutadladze, which was an incredible fight that I was looking forward to. He then gets it flipped on an absolute head 180. He then goes to the biggest betting favourite on the card. He gets a UFC debutant, and he is an experienced, grizzled fighter who's been in there with some very tough competition, and he's still very young. Jamie Mullarkey comes in, incredible first round, but he got buzzed cold.
I mean, you get sloppy. Like it was the same with it reminded me of the Cara France fight. Just his output was just more higher. He was just in and out, much more active. But it takes one, and it was just it wasn't like it was just sort of a Hail Mary right hand. He ducked him through, and it just landed flush, and that's the game you play, isn't it? And I like Jamie Mullarkey, and I think when he fought Michael Johnson, there was shades of that. He came close to getting finished in that fight. Did he won that one, right? I'm pretty sure.
He eked out a close decision. I think
he was close. He nearly got finished. I think
the thing with Mullarkey is he's skilled, and he's got very good coaches, very good training partners, very good skill set, good spirit, good heart, good shit. He's got all these good attributes going for him. He just sometimes, or often in his fights, gives up too much of a chance for the other person to get into the fight. He leaves his chin a little bit high. He stays in the pocket a little bit too long. He maybe puts a combination together when it doesn't really need to be there, and he seems to get clocked quite a lot, and he's tough so he can wear it out, but you don't want to do that too much. And when you come up against a guy like Naimov who hits hard, like you said, it only takes one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you saw this, but that, you know, the stadium of guys from Tajikistan. That shit's insane.
Tajikistan. That's unbelievable. That was 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, and then there was the other guy. That fight was great. That was my favorite fight. Yeah, the third round was a bit, you know, they both quite gassed out. I can't remember the names off the top of my head. I should have had it written down. But the pace in those first 2 rounds was just insane. I should get it up, but the stats. I need to have a look at that. But they were just swinging leather.
It was actually a pretty fun card. You had the Karina De Silva who snapped that girl's leg off on her UFC debut.
Oh yeah,
which was not. And I was sitting there and I felt there's some sort of feeling that it's hard to describe, but there's some sort of feeling when you're sitting at home and you're watching the UFC and you just nail a prediction on verdict. There's this biggest trick of ego.
You get it?
It's so hard to describe. I'm sitting there with a Karina De Silva first round submission.
I haven't used it,
and I'm sitting there as smug as anything.
I haven't used verdict enough. I just do. Only time I do picks is when I make bets, and I don't only bet when I'm confident. So.
It's a little bit off topic, really. And we'll jump in some news topics in a second. But
no.
I never used to bet. I never used to gamble on the UFC, and then every here and there, I'd just have a little bet. But I would never play smart, because if I played smart, I would know, right, this is a likely 2-leg. I could do that, make a little bit of profit. Next week, but I was never playing with enough to make that interesting, so I'd always want to just chuck a 5 or an XYZ and have something a bit fun.
Oh, like 5, 6 fights. Yeah, that's what I do every time.
7, 8 deep sometimes, you know, just trying to have a little bit.
Yeah. I've done 12, mate. I've done 12.
I'm just trying to have a little bit of fun.
It actually went all right.
My rationale to myself is I've had weeks before where I've predicted every week, so sometimes I'm thinking,
yeah, you know, got it, and then it just doesn't happen.
Long story short, I stopped anyway. And the other day, I was doing some work. It was on a Friday night, and Bellator was on. And I remember I was like, "Oh, Fabian Edwards is fighting Gegard Mousasi,
right?" Yeah.
And I was just like, "Oh, out of interest, what are the odds on that?" Because I knew people were doubting.
Yeah, I saw Fabian they were quite good, weren't they?
And he was a 3-1 underdog. And I was sitting there, and I thought, 3-1.
Oh man,
I was just sitting there thinking, that's free money. I just put a score 5. I put 25.
That was like
me
it, with the.
And it felt the easiest £75 I've ever made. I watched 25 minutes, complete dominance, didn't get scratched, didn't get touched. I was like, happy days.
That was me with the Leon, both Leon fights actually. To be fair, I had him to get by decision in the first one. I didn't expect him to fucking knock him out, but
groomed like a little girl.
That second one, it was basically the same odds. He was basically the same odds to win the trilogy, and I was like, "There's so easy money." And that was that was a good.
You mentioned it earlier. You were saying just before we jumped on the podcast. You were saying, I said, "Oh, hold it, because I want to ask you about that later." You were talking about your channel, and you were saying it's annoying you at the moment. Why did you say that?
Yeah, just understanding the algorithm. Like, obviously, we're both new to the game. I don't know what the science is behind it. I think you can maximize your your reach and your chances of doing well, but some of it is just up to chance. I don't know, because like my last 2 videos, they just after 2 days they just basically just flatlined completely on the graph. And my other ones before, they had a little bit more sustainable reach. Like my third video was just chugging for like 2 months before it basically capped off. And then these ones are going after like a day, 2 days. And I'm like, and they're getting good views, like 10K views. I'm not disappointed in that at all, but it's something to learn, I guess. Got to do some research.
That's such an interesting point about YouTube, because it's somewhat of a side people don't see to it, or sometimes don't speak about, because of course you have the side where you have to come up with the ideas, you have to have the side where you film, you have to have the side where you edit, you have to have the side where you storytell and sound produce and post produce and color grade and do all these things. But then on top of that, you have to then have the knowledge in post to understand how to interpret the data you've been given by your work, to understand how you can manipulate that to make your work better and to make it work better. So you have to start learning retention curves and like, do you see what I mean? You have to start learning these things.
No, but the thing is, what I realized with that is the more I've delved into that, the more I second guess. Like, and I'm just like making thumbnails. It's just like, because I start with the thumbnail first, and then before I do anything, and it's like I kind of second guess whether I draft up like 2-3 versions of it, and sometimes I'm debating changing it. Like my latest video, I drafted a second version of the thumbnail, and like 30 minutes before I had it scheduled to upload, I was like panicking whether I should change it or not. And it was just, and it was only like a subtle thing. It was like just changing the color. But it can mean so much, but you just have to leave it up to chance.
It's funny you say that, because this week I've, for the first time, honestly, since I've had my channel properly, because I said I was going to start taking it seriously, and I am taking it seriously. I'm going to film at GB Top Team 3 times a week. I'm coming back. I'm editing 5, 6, 7 days a week, doing a few hours each day, like trying to learn something. Mental. I'm trying to. I said I was going to go and commit to it and do it properly, because I need to put my attention into that, and I had every intention of doing that. So I've proper switched it over. But the reason I'm saying that is because for the first time ever, I've spent hours, like painstaking hours, of actually creating a video, selecting clips, or getting audio and moving it about, getting interviews, trying to storytell, trying to get the correct pacings, the musics, the sound effects, trying to give that layer and the depth to the production of it, and doing it on so many levels, and trying to be creative and original and all these different things. And it's difficult in itself. And then at the end of that is, now I'm sat there and I'm stuck because I can't quite think of the title. And what some people don't realise is sometimes you can have a really good present, but the wrapping is rubbish. The bow's rubbish, and the present, the wrapping paper looks horrible, and it gives you that cringe when you first look, so you don't even want to look at it. You want to go to the store where it's perfectly just curved round the edges with a lovely silk bow dusted off with a little sequin, you know what I mean? But that's the struggle, right? That's the struggle, is finding those two.
I mean, the more I end up looking at my I think the downside to making thumbnails and stuff first is the more you have it there just sitting in the back waiting to come back to when you're ready to upload the video, I think you just begin to dislike it a little bit more and more, and you want to change it because it's not new, and you just think of, maybe I should do this and that, and it's just, and that goes a lot. It's the same with my writing. When my writing process, a lot of times I'll scrap stuff. Like I'll write a good bit, and then I'll come back to it when I've near finished it, and I'll cut stuff out and completely redo it because I'm not happy with the direction I've gone and taken the script. Is in a completely different style, or it's just a little bit subtle differences, and you end up having to take stuff out and change it. And it's the same. It's all the same. It's the same for the whole process with editing as well. Some stuff I think will look good right at the start, and then I'll come back and I'll be like, and I end up spending way too much time changing stuff, chopping and changing. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I think when I've trying to be more efficient with my time and how much time I spend on editing, because I really don't like doing it.
I think one thing that we as an audience have definitely done is we've forced the person on the other side to make better videos. Essentially, it's harder than ever to capture people's attention. Sure. So now it's a case of you have to be getting better at all these things. You have to be consciously trying to up your titles, your thumbnails, your hooks at the start, your early retention, your storytelling, all these different things. You're trying to optimize them and make them better, because you are essentially competing for someone's time. They've got very limited time in the day. They've got 24 hours. They go to work, they see their friends, they see their family. It's like you're having to ask someone, okay, hello, can you please sit down for 10 minutes? Can I have some of your time? Complete random person. It's a big ask, right? It's a big ask. And that's why it's always, sometimes when you see the metrics, sometimes it's important to actually realize the scale of, like you said, 10,000 earlier, 10,000 people watching 10 minutes of your work. It's a lot of people. It's a lot of commitments.
It's hard to visualize.
You think of a stadium, right?
Like on my most popular one. My most popular one, right? So the impressions,
I think it's got like 5 million or something, which is, and I can't even like comprehend that, right? But then it becomes a point of, how do I turn that into views, and how do I turn that into,
I looked
everything
at a
else,
picture once of
it's
Woodstock
difficult.
because it's just the gauge for
I know what you mean.
250,000 or whatever it was. People look like, so I could sort of see what that looked like when I'm seeing these metrics, and it gives you a very different perspective. What we'll jump into a couple of news stories I've got anyway, and if you've got any, please do share.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah.
Did you hear this week? This referee came out and was talking about how, I think he was reffing the game, and Mark Zuckerberg got choked unconscious and he was snoring.
Oh yeah, I read this yesterday. Yeah. I don't know about that. No, I mean, I because I saw he won a competition, and I don't know if this was a separate one, because in the one where he won a gold or something, there was nothing about him getting choked out. And even then, like, cool, I get it's cool to hate Mark Zuckerberg and that, because he's a billionaire, isn't it? But like, why? Well, it's for me, that's like clout chasing a little bit. Like, you're just looking for 5 minutes of fame. I think it's just a bit.
I didn't think people. I didn't even realise people were hating on that. I just thought it was just you know what I mean? I just thought it was a story that came out, and then I just was looking
weird,
through it a little bit.
I mean, I don't know if people are hating on it. I find it a bit strange.
Yeah, I didn't really get that.
Like, realistically, man gets choked out in a jiu-jitsu competition. It's like, wow, that is what the sport is.
You have to think as well, if you're him, it's almost impossible to put ourselves in his shoes, but the amount of influence and notoriety and power and prestige that man has. I mean, his products alone are consumed by large majorities of the population, not of a country, not of America, not of China or Brazil, of the population, billions of people. So put yourself in a position that's very vulnerable. You're in public. You've got a lot of variables, different people, submissions. Is jiu-jitsu. Anything can happen to you. You can get choked out. You can get your arm snapped. And he's fighting. He's fighting for these positions. He's fighting for these submissions. Quite literally, because he's going to sleep.
Yeah, I respect it for that. Yeah, for sure.
That takes a lot of bottle. I think a lot of people either are just quite happy to hate, because why not? I think a lot of it's jealousy, probably. Here's someone who's very successful.
Yeah, I mean, I don't particularly like him, but I still have respect for him, especially as someone with his level of, notoriety, to step in there. Because I think, like, for me, I hate competing, because it just, and I'm just a regular person, but competing for me is like anxiety level 100. Oh god, I don't even, like, it's horrible. Especially when everyone's watching you, and let alone when you're, one of the most richest men on the planet. Like,
when you were younger,
fair play, he made a good account of himself.
Did you play sports? Did you play a sport?
I mean, yeah, I wouldn't say I was any good at it.
What did you play when you were younger, or were you in teams or anything like that?
Well, did you ever usual stuff?
Did you ever play in a football final where there was a stadium or like a large crowd or a lot of people watching?
No, mate, no. Mate,
I just mean, even sometimes when there's a field and a few people come here, a few people come there, next thing you know, there's 100 people.
Oh, yeah, no, of course. Yeah, like school football.
But my point was going to be...
Yeah, it was scary.
Did that make you feel anxious? Did that make you feel nervous? Did that like clam up your game? Did you enjoy that?
I don't know. When I was a kid, I don't think you have a grasp on it. So I wouldn't say no, but like when I competed in jiu-jitsu last year, never competed before. It was annoying as well because it was varsity, so it was uni versus uni. So it was kind of like bragging rights. And they didn't do it like every other, like most jiu-jitsu competitions and places. They'll have loads of like matches going on at the same time on different mats. There was only one mat, so everyone was watching one fight at a time, and there was like 50, 60 people
That's a
watching.
lot of people.
And it was just like, it was terrifying. Yeah. And it was annoying because I understand it for me, that was a really good perspective to have, because it put myself in the shoes of, you know, I'm not going to say I was a professional fighter or anything, but I understand the nerves that come with combat sports, you know. And, you know, it's just a stupid university competition. It's not that big of a deal. But, you know, compared to these guys who are fighting for belts and stuff, right? But it really does affect your game because you're going, your heart's going a million miles an hour. You can't focus up. And that's something I really, when I train, I focus on a lot is breathing and just slowing everything down so I can be methodical. But when I compete, it's
100 miles
everything
an hour
out the window. And oh, mate, yeah. And I was in a good position and I could have got a triangle choke. And I play it over so often in my head. I just hesitated for about 2 seconds. Because I got the leg through over the top, right? And all I needed to do was lock it up with my other one. And I just, that split second where I hesitated and I panicked, even though it was right there for the taking and it gave me the opportunity to get out. And then it was a back and forth. I ended up losing. I lost by armbar. And
you sound haunted by the situation. It sounds like you've not got over it.
No, seriously, because I'm thinking it's great. I'm a lot better now, but it nerves. If that was just a regular role, I would like to think I would have done better because the nerves really do throw you off. And some people are built like that where they can they're immune to it. But you know, especially when it's a lot of your friends watching as well, it really adds the emotional weight. I get that.
It is crazy because when you think about it, this is why that even if it's not a great fight card on paper, or even though people say that this fight is this, and at the end of the day, when I sit down and I watch MMA, usually if the storytelling and the build-up's good, I'm sitting down, and the reason why it's always intriguing to me, no matter what, really, is because you've got two people going out there that have basically dedicated their life to this one skill. Now, on this one particular day, on this one particular 15 minutes, they have to do that thing at the best. And on the line, they've got all the hours they've put in, their physical health, their mental health, their time away from their family, their money that they've paid for camps, their possibility it's their last fight on the contract and then they'll get cut from the UFC, possibility that they may have to retire or they get knocked out or hurt and can't fight again. All these different things. And you have to then go in there and just put it all out of your head, relax with a clear mind and demonstrate what you can do in the training room.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy the mental strength that's required to execute it.
Yeah, I mean, and people forget that for sure. Like, I mean, people are so quick to, you know, slate a fighter, you know, dig into them on Twitter and that, and people don't know and they talk about a lot of the time. Some guys will talk about that in the post fight, how much effort that puts in, but it's just it goes straight.
It's because everyone says it, right? Because
they can't
everyone
relate
says
and they never will. Exactly, yeah, but it's true. Yeah, it's still true. Yeah, and it's a big deal for sure. I that's something we're definitely going to go into in the future. So 21 stay tuned. We're going to get some cool people on. That is the plan.
For me personally, anyway, I think when I started, and I know everyone obviously doesn't have the blessing to be able to do this, but for me personally, when I started working with fighters and being in their training sessions and in the training rooms and filming different sessions and just watching the general grind, the lifestyle, talking to these people, learning a bit more about what they do and how they do it, you realise it just becomes a little bit more real. It's a bit more tangible. You can you're a bit more sort of in touch with the sport in terms of when you see people walk out there, you can actually visualise what that work looks like, what a 6-week training camp looks like, how many runs that is, how many rounds that is, how many injuries, how many shitty times you have to get up on no calories and have to fight another man trying to punch your head through the canvas. It's tricky, you know. One thing that I want to ask you, The Ultimate Fighter, episode 1, what did you think of it? Just give me a quick...
I haven't seen it.
You're not really missing out, to be honest.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it's never really. I like the clips. I always stuff, watch it. like from all the old series, like Rampage busting down the door and
I feel like they're holding on to it a little bit. The Ultimate Fighter, but
I haven't. Yeah, it's not something I've done into.
Me sad. I seem to watch every episode, and I will do, because piece of content like that, I like to just be tapped in, if nothing else.
Yeah, for sure.
Go on.
Oh, actually, I'll throw something at you. Did you see? Did you see? I don't know what promotion it was in. I might have been a Russian. You must have seen this today or yesterday. The guy getting knocked out from off his back. Yeah, no, the guy knocking the dude out.
He's a cruiserweight
off his back in Mount.
boxing champion.
That's wild,
and
man.
that was his MMA debut. And they've got this crowd of people. They've just got like a crowd of people watching, and it looks like a coliseum in just Poland. It looks incredible.
It's mad, isn't it?
And he gets a flush. It was reminiscent of Kevin Holland, Jack Ray D'Souza. But that was incredible.
Thing is, at least with that one, he sat up and carried that momentum forward when he came through with the punch. But this one, he was just flat on his back completely.
It's the placement.
It's wild.
It's the placement, and he obviously caught him a little bit off tempo, a little bit off rhythm, where he just weren't expecting anything, and he's probably just very compressed, and he's not bracing at all, and he's just like, and you're tired, like you're too tired, you're in mount, you're trying to pin this big geezer down, and he's just trying to swim out of the way, and he's got like his sweaty, hairy body rubbing up against you, and you're tired, you know, you're just like,
yeah, exactly.
I'm knackered. Go away. Did you have any topics that you found that you wanted to bring up?
Actually, I was just going back to the fight card yesterday. The Caceres Pineda fight. That was probably my favorite fight of the night. We should have jumped on that earlier. That was Alex Caceres. I love the way he fights. He's so loose. And the thing is, I just wish he threw more kicks. I mean, obviously, he actually, that third round where he landed the body kick right at the start, which was basically the beginning of the end. Fair play to Pineda for hanging in. But he doesn't, there was so, like, it just, after that kick, it left the head open for just a high kick. I was just begging for him to throw it. Because that's how he knocked out Erosa, wasn't it?
No, you're right. He has that dexterity where he can just flick it up there, and they're deadly. And they come down at an angle where they just, like, really drop some weight into your head. It's not nice at all. But those body kicks were outrageous. I don't know how. What's the fella's name? Slipped my mind. I don't know how the fella ate 3-4 of those flush, like real flush. And I'm sitting there thinking he may have broken a couple of ribs quite easily because he was crushing the body. And I mean, literally, when you get a Coke can. You know when you get a Coke can and you've drunk out of it and you just sort of smash the edge in and it just goes big indentation. That was essentially what we were witnessing. Just each strike, he was just curling over. He had his hands on it. I could be wrong. It could be, and I don't mean it in a disrespectful way, but it almost seemed as if he didn't have that killer instinct switched on of when he was hurt to just be like, right, okay, I'm just going to go for it now. Because there was a couple of times when he had just his sort of hands on his hips, he'd taken a big body kick.
You can't help it.
I'm saying from Caceres, when he's doing that, the ref saying you've got to do something, and he's got his hands on it. I think that there could have been like another little gear, and that sounds harsh because it was an incredible fight. But I do think he could have got him out of there. I do think he could. I think he's skilled enough. I just think it was maybe a confidence thing. Maybe it's just because Pineda's so tough and he's a threat himself. So
yeah, I mean, he did end up going to ground about halfway through that round as well, and he definitely got a body triangle in one of those rounds. I believe it was the third as well. But that people, again, just another thing, people don't realize how, especially when your liver is already damaged like that. But a body triangle is so sapping, and it's so painful to deal with because it's just it's constant just pressure on your abdomen completely, and it really is tough. And especially if you're already hurt like that, that's excruciating to deal with. It saps your energy so quickly, and that's something people don't realize how effective it is, and also to get out of it is very difficult. And you can see him trying to do it, trying to jump from one side to the other, trying to break the body triangle by flipping over to one side. But even then, that's only the first step, and it's just so difficult to break that. And he held that on for a good amount of time, and that must have been so hard to deal with. So I have to give him credit for staying in there, and even got that knockdown at the end. I think it was more of an off-balance thing from Caceres, but it was still a clean shot. And I think it's a testament to how tough both of those guys are, really. But it was a great fight.
Yeah, that was
by far my
that
favorite.
was a bang. I did actually have it on my notes. I'm glad that you came back to it because that was a very good fight. There was
Right.
all I was going to say
of course,
is it's good week. It has been a good week for GB Top Team because one of their biggest prospects, Chanel Dyer, got an impressive win in Polaris competition along with Ashley Grimshaw, who also is the jiu-jitsu coach. So that's been a good week. And then Emrah, who's a very promising featherweight who won his last fight in Cage Warriors in London on New Year's, has been signed up to Dana White's Contender Series. I was chatting to him the other day.
Oh, that's massive.
And I said to him, oh, are you fighting on the Cage Warriors card in July? He said, oh, no, I'm not fighting. He said, I got a few offers and told me a few of the offers. Some really exciting offers, actually, to be honest. Some really exciting offers that he had. And then he said, oh, there's this other promotion that I'm going to just do this fight first. And I said, oh, what promotion is it? He said, oh, it's one in America. And he said, oh, it's quite a good one. I was like, oh, all right. I said, where is it? And he said, Vegas. I said, oh, when it? And then I said, when is it? And he said, August. And I said, Dana White's Contender Series. And he went, oh, no, it's not that. And I was like, don't worry, I won't say anything if it is, because August, Vegas, Dana White's Contender Series. There's no other major organisations in Vegas doing MMA events, trust me. I'm dialed in enough to know that. So news came out the next day, he's on Dana White, so that's exciting. So hopefully he'll get an impressive performance there and go into the UFC. And he's a good prospect. He's a good grappler, nice striker. Jiu-jitsu's good. Like, he's just a well-rounded mixed martial artist, and he's just a hard worker, very dedicated to his craft, all disciplines, and always very committed. So it's pretty exciting. Is there anything that you had off the top of your head before you want to move on to next week's UFC pay-per-view?
No, I'm thinking.
Cool. So let's have a look
then
at UFC 289, is it? Yeah, 289. So we've got the headliner, Amanda Nunes v. Irina Aldana. We'll come on to that in a second. But I first want to start with, is there a fight on the fight card? Now, I will start by saying that I did have a look at it, and I sometimes feel like I have a bit of a biased opinion because I don't pay for the pay-per-view because it comes on BT Sport in England. Big shout out to BT. And it's on my TV subscription.
Thank God.
Thankfully.
So I'm staying up
so
5 a.m.
I don't pay for any pay-per-view. So I look at a pay-per-view and I'm like, oh, happy days, pay-per-view. Other people look at pay-per-views. I'm not paying £70 for this. And when I look at this fight card, I'm going to struggle to see many more than 150,000 pay-per-view buyers for this one, to be perfectly honest, or something around that figure, because there are some good fights on it, but we're scratching a barrel with a UFC card pay-per-view, especially coming back to Canada for the first time. But is there any fights or fighters that you want to particularly like?
I mean, there's the one there. I think obviously, Nate the Train versus Dan Ige. That's a banger. Like, both of those guys it's just great matchmaking because both those guys are like, they got dynamite in their hands, and that's just always going to be a banger fight. So that's definitely that one.
Fun.
That
is the fans' main event, really. If you know anything about Dan 50K Ige and Nate the Train Landwehr, that is some phenomenal matchmaking, because I can guarantee you two things. Both men are coming to throw with bad intentions, and no one's taken a backward step. Absolutely none of them. And we've seen them before in some absolute barn burners, and that has a 3-round war, to be honest. Like a grimy,
probably
however
one
long
round,
it goes,
to be honest,
it's going to be a painful amount of time. Even if it's a 30-second fight, it will be a painful 30 seconds. Very true. Because the train is perfect, because that's what it's going to be. It's going to be a train crash, these two coming at each other. Dan Ige, he is a little bit more polished now. He's a little bit more savvy in terms of how he uses his skills, but he has that Hawaiian dog in him that you can't quite erase that easily. And if someone is going to bring it out of him, it's going to be Nate the Train Landwehr. So I'm ready for some fireworks.
He brings it out of anyone, to be honest. He'll
And
drag anyone.
He's getting some good wins as well. He's got
stop, man.
A good grappling game. He's got some really nice kicks.
Who did he submit? He got the rear naked choke on. Who was it on? I can't remember who he was on in his last fight.
Was it some variety of legend? Can't remember off the top of my head. This is the thing. You watch so many fights every weekend. I put a tweet up today because there's
it just goes in
a UFC event for every day for the next 4 months, and then I'll watch every fight on that. So that's what 4 months is 16 weeks. So that's 16 cards. Like let's say 10 fights a card. There's 160 fights for the next couple of months. You know, it's just sort of insane. So you went with the Dan Ige Nate the Chain, which is a fantastic choice, and I'm going to stay away from the co-main.
I mean, that was an easy
that's
pick.
an obvious one. So I'm just going to I'm going to mention another one. Sure. David Dvorak, I never say that name quite well. Steven Urseg, and he's an Australian flyweight that's been making quite a lot of noise on the regional scene. He's been meaning to come up to the big leagues for a long time, and then his debut got pushed back, and this and that. And David Dvorak, he was on a 16-fight win streak. He's a very, very good fighter, and he's fought very good competition. Yeah. He's on a 2-fight skid, went decisions with good competition in the flyweight division. Manel Kape, very talented. So this is an interesting one because this is really testing him, really testing the waters on his first fight. It doesn't get a lot tougher than a name like David Dvorak on your flyweight debut on the UFC. So I'm excited for this one. I reached out to a couple of boys that run media pages in Australia, and I just asked them about him. I said, "Are you excited about him? How do you see this one going?" And they just said to me that they think he's going to be too much on the ground. They think his grappling is just going to be a bit too much. He's going to be a bit too savvy, and he's going to possibly take him down and submit him, if not win a decision. So we shall see how that one goes out. But I think that one's fun. But a fight I want to throw at you and get your thoughts on. This one's quite a good fight, to be fair. Imavov versus Chris Curtis. What do you think of that?
Yeah, it's a weird one because didn't Imavov fought Strickland, right? So he's just going through his training partners now. Chris Curtis he's a weird one because he's almost like he's in the wrong sport, isn't he? Like because he's so slick on the feet with his hands, and he just feels like he belongs in the ring and not the octagon. But he can crack, and I think he's a lot more. Chris Curtis is a lot more powerful, dangerous than a guy like Strickland, who just Strickland fights in such a weird style. But so Curtis definitely more of a threat there, and I can see Curtis putting him away.
You can never. One thing you can never do is write Chris Curtis off because he's always in the fight and he's always got the ability to end it. And he's a veteran. He's been in a lot of positions. He's seen a lot of different situations, and I rarely bet against him. But it was just one thing that I noticed most when it was the Hermansson fight. And I know he took it on short notice in London and whatnot, but it was just his lack of ability.
Yeah.
And he's a really good fighter and he's got a ton of good skills, but I just always saw this inability to... He's got nice hands, but his footwork never seemed to cut off his opponent. And if you watch the Jack Hermansson fight, he's following Jack and he's getting frustrated and he's swearing at him and doing all these things. And I was thinking, well, that is down to you. You have to use your footwork to cut off the cage, to cut off your opponent, whether you put kicks on that to corner him in, whether you're putting hooks on that, whatever it may be. Like that's down to you. So I do look at this matchup and I think with Imavov, he has got good skills. He's from a very good camp, good training partners with Silgan and obviously Fernando Lopez, the incredible coach. We have seen him before get a little bit tired. We have seen him before get a little bit deflated looking. The pop from his shots weren't quite there anymore. The confidence wasn't quite there. And I think if it gets like that, Chris Curtis will happily just take the reins, take over, and potentially get a late stoppage in this, like a late round 3.
Yeah, I mean, that wouldn't surprise me either. It was the same with
he was when he fought Phil Hawes like last year or maybe it was the year before.
Best name in MMA.
He was losing that fight.
Phil Hawes.
Yeah.
How could you sit there and say
and
that?
And then and he landed
as
that
a name,
flush.
I'd have to introduce myself as Philip. There's no other two ways. But even that name, like that's not getting a good press at the moment.
Hey, well, Gilbert, we got Gilbert.
Is it
Gilbert
Philip
Burns
Schofield?
exists.
Is his name right? It's
Yeah.
not getting. Yeah, it's not getting good. It's not getting good
Oh,
coverage
mate,
at the
yeah,
moment.
weird.
The old name Philip. It's not a good time to be a Phil.
Yeah.
No.
Sure. Definitely not. Nah, but I don't know. I mean, Curtis caught him right at the end and put him out. And again, that's a testament to his striking ability. But you're right. I think maybe he just does. He lacks that extra. I think he lets the emotion get to him a little bit. Yeah, and I think that that fight IQ goes out the window when things don't go his way. When I think in his eyes, maybe it's a case of he expects his opponent to do one thing, and when they don't, he sort of
that's
throws
true.
his toys out the pram a little bit. Everything goes out the window. That leads to lapse of concentration, and I think just an overall that'll affect all part of your game. The moment you lose the mental battle,
but he's
you know what,
he's good, and he's got a wicked combination that goes body and then hook to the head, and he hits hard, and he's just the anatomy of him, those sort of wound up arms. He's really like broad chest, but he's like very coiled in. He's just got short, powerful hips, like he rotates heavy into hooks. So when he goes body head and he's just committed to it, he can switch anyone off. So it is a good matchup for sure. Another quite fun one that we'll just touch on is someone that I've been excited about since Dana White's Contender Series, and that was a long time back, and he hasn't been very active. But Mike Malott, I watched him on the Contender Series, and I was really excited about what he could go on to do, even before he had his fight. And then he had his fight. He had a fight in the UFC. And just every time he's gone out and done exactly how I felt like he was going to look. But he's just never been able to get that consistency with his fights to get enough going, to get any momentum. But he's fighting Adam Fugit. Do you know anything about Mike Malott? Are you aware of him? Yeah.
No, I'm not going to pretend I know much about Adam, but Mike Mallott's, he's got a lot of hype around him, and especially with, home turf, Canada, I think it's his for the taking, really.
Good
definitely
rig.
A talent, actually.
Good rig.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's an exciting matchup for sure. I mean, I'm not going to say I know much about Fugit, as I said, but for me, that's just a case of seeing again.
Let's get stuck
into
the juicy one, right? Really,
he's been out for a while.
Let's be honest. The main event is Charles Oliveira v. Beneil Dariush. That is the main event. No disrespect to anyone else. It's quite unanimously the case. It's a shame because they're not getting pay-per-view points, and it isn't a 5-rounder. But they're going to be doing all the heavy lifting in terms of the media, so on and so forth. How do you see this fight? Do you like it? Exactly. Who do you like it for?
Yeah, mate. I mean, I love both of them. I love Charles as well. Like Charles, I prefer. I want him to win, but for me, Dariush is. I think the way I see it, if we're looking at his trajectories, Charles is just past the top, right? And I think Dariush is just getting there. So I think Dariush's trajectory is just upwards, and Charles is just starting to come down now. And I'm not saying it's not going to be. I think it's going to be a really close fight, but I think Dariush is just going to be. I think they're in two different places in their career now, and I think Dariush is going to take that opportunity and seize it. I mean, we've seen Charles's chin, whether a lot of times he goes to ground intentionally or not. We've seen him get caught before, even by not even the best of strikers. Like Makhachev's definitely improved as a striker, but we're not going to sit here and say he's the cream of the crop. But a guy like Dariush is seasoned. So I think he could definitely catch him there. Nice on the ground as well, pretty strong. So they're both really well-rounded guys. Again, I'd love to see a submission from Charles or something, but I just see Dariush maybe catching him quite early. I think
Beneil Dariush is the biggest threat to Islam Makhachev at the 155-pound division. I think he's the worst matchup for anybody in the division. I think if I was going to fight at 155 pounds, I
really
believe if I look at the top 10, I believe Benil Dariush to be the worst matchup for absolutely every single one of them. And I shall tell you for why. As
Not
you said,
Sarukian.
working at a very good
All right.
gym, very good training partners at King's MMA for a very long time. His striking's ever improving. He works with Giga Jikadze day in, day out. Marvin Fedori, day in, day out. You're looking at boxers and kickboxers alike, very high level, all operating at the upper echelon of the UFC. He is then notoriously one of the best grapplers we've ever seen in terms of his accolades in the UFC, if we're just talking straight jiu-jitsu. But the thing that Benil has that Charles doesn't have, and a lot of these other people don't have, is not only does he have seriously dangerous jiu-jitsu, where it isn't as opportunistic as a Charles Oliveira, which I'll come on to in a second, but he has wrestling. And we saw that against Gamrot. And you just look at Gamrot at face value, he's such an incredible wrestler. His single legs get anyone down.
Absolutely.
I'm convinced he could single leg DC at this point. They are ridiculous, and he's tenacious with them. But Benil completely mitigated that. His scrambles were incredible. His positioning was good. He was even throwing up submission attempts, getting back to his feet, and then piecing him up. And I just believe him to be the biggest problem for anyone. And when I look at this fight, Charles Oliveira is always dangerous. Of course he is. Most finishes in the UFC. Of course, and I never would, and I'm never going to say, he's got absolutely no chance. But I have a look at this fight, and I think we've seen Benil Dariush get into firefights before and get touched up and hit, and even though he's on a ridiculous 9-fight win streak, which is just absurd, it's just absurd to do at the 155-pound division. I don't think that's actually spoke about enough.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. So Charles Oliveira can always land heavy shots. He's always going to be able to maybe land one or two and be able to hurt him. We know how hard he hits. However, if I just look at this, 9 times out of 10, how do I see it playing out? I think it's more case going to be he's going to anticipate the flashy kicks from Oliveira and the distance closes, so he can sort of crash in and go for a takedown, because I heard him talking on his interview. He's identified that he always goes for one. Yeah. He's going to just stay at range, piece him up with his feet, and then if he needs to take it to the ground, because if anyone's going to get submitted in this fight, I know the narrative's going to be that Charles is going to be doing that, but I don't see that at all. I think if anyone's getting submitted, it's going to be Charles Oliveira. We don't see Benil Dariush get tapped out in the UFC all too often, if ever. And Charles Oliveira, however good he is offensively at finding positions, latching on and getting credible finishes, Benil was a different level in terms of actually methodically playing jiu-jitsu with grappling and MMA and wrestling. So, I think...
Yeah. But he can get caught, though. He can, because I think if you look... Obviously, fighters develop and they improve. When Dariush got caught by
Barboza, though.
And Barboza's he's one of the best strikers in the game.
We're talking about a sniper
exactly.
that can land on anyone.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of my favourite KOs. He reads because he feints in with the jab and and then goes for the takedown, and Barboza read him and just pop that knee.
That man can do it to anybody.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. But Oliveira, I think, what I want to see, the moment the clinch battle, that whoever wins the clinch battle, the moment we see the first clinch, if it gets there, the moment I see who's winning that, then I know I know where the fight's going to go, to be honest, because I think that's Oliveira's best opportunity for making some real damage in there, because his knees, when we saw it against Poirier as well, his knees were really, really nice. So I think if he can get them off, it'll be good. But if Dariush shuts that part of his game down, I think it's
Oliveira's going to really struggle to find Dariush. I remember thinking in his last fight, I was super impressed with how much cleaner his boxing looked and his footwork looked and his composure and his balance. His balance looked so good. Sometimes he's overextended a little bit and he's a little bit unbalanced walking through stances, and his shots are a bit wild and a bit... He just looked so clean and so polished in his last performance. That left hand that dropped Gamrot, that sort of that one, that was one of the cleanest punches of my recent memory in the UFC. It was unbelievable.
Lost me a lot of money.
It was honestly unbelievable. So yeah, that's an incredible fight. So how, if I was to put you on a spot and say, give me a prediction, how do you see that one going, so we can wrap up?
I'll go
Yeah,
Dariush,
I
I
think
think round 2
potentially
TKO. Yeah.
I think potentially a submission. I think he can hurt him. I think he can hurt him on the feet. I
Yeah,
think
it's
Charles
possible to.
Oliveira is going to try and crash through a couple of times and get into the clinch and make things nasty in there, and maybe try and take him down and chuck up a couple of submission attempts. But I think Dariush is going to be too savvy. I think he's going to be a step ahead of the positions. I think he's going to get him to get frustrated on the outside, and I think he's going to start picking him apart, start landing heavy shots. And I think he's going to get him to a position where he's going to be able to jump on an opportunity, an arm triangle, or a rear naked choke if he can take his back against the cage. So yeah, I'm going to say a second round submission. So let's talk about it. We've got the main event: Amanda Nunes, Irina Aldana. What do you think about this one?
I mean, I prefer it. I prefer it a lot more to the. Yeah, I prefer it way more to the Pena trilogy match. That should never happen. I think that second fight, you know, you can call it 1-1, but when you look how dominant Nunes was in that second fight,
we didn't need
there's no
it,
need for a third one.
Need it.
It's just different golf in class, really. No, we didn't. So I'm glad. I really like Irene Aldana a lot. When she fought Yana Kunitskaya, and then obviously she had that loss to Holly Holm, which was obviously a bit of a setback. But then she beat. She landed that flush again. It was the same one she landed on Kunitskaya. She's got that bob in Mexican style. That sort of reminds me of Andy Ruiz in boxing, just bobbing a women, then just no, yeah, and then but that left hook, that flush left hook, is just money. So I actually think this is going to be a really good fight. I'd hope so. I don't think it's going to be a whitewash as people say it is, and we've seen people write off challengers. Like I was pissed when Shevchenko lost to Grasso. I did not think that was going to happen.
To be honest,
I know we saw holes with her, a bit of a tangent. Yeah, like there was holes when she fought Tyler Santos, but I thought she'd clear that up. I thought that was maybe a bit of complacency. But that wasn't the case, and we saw that in the Grasso fight. So fighters do drop off; it's inevitable.
And the truth of
it's just a matter of when. And
the truth
Nunes,
of it as well, to be perfectly honest,
you never know when it's going to happen.
Sometimes it's so easy for us to sit here and say, "Oh, they dropped off a bit," and I'm guilty of it. Everyone else is at times, but it's also just sometimes you have to think when they're walking up there. There's so many variables. It's quite possible that they just. Bad night at the office, Bad night at the office. Couple of mistakes. They were feeling flat.
I mean, that was the first one.
They didn't eat enough in the morning, maybe, or maybe they ate too much. Just little tweaks, maybe, that happened, and it can change a whole game. But
yeah, I mean, that was Nunes in the first Pena fight. There was definitely something, because look, if you just compare the difference in the performances, like night and day. Maybe it was a bad camp. I did hear some things about that, about having a bad camp or something. So it could have been that, because I mean, it must have been something, because the difference between the first and second fight was like completely
first and
foremost,
I've got to shout out that liver kick KO that she got, because that was just. Was it Macy Chiasson?
Oh yeah, that was wild.
It was ridiculous. Up kick, liver kick, KO.
Could be wrong there, but yeah, great. I think she's one of the most underrated. We're going on to the picks. I think I'm actually going to pick her to win. Maybe that's a bit of just for a bit of fun, different shout. But I've always backed her as one of the better fighters in the division, and she's been hanging around that top 5 for a long time. I actually fancy her to crack a little bit, have a good shot. It's just on the ground. That's where maybe, because Nunes has actually got an underrated ground game. I think she's very talented there. So that's a battle I'm interesting.
I think on the feet is going to be really competitive.
Sure.
To be perfectly honest, I think it's actually going to be super competitive on the feet.
Yeah,
I can't say for certain which way I think I see that going, but if you have a look at the different styles of both of them, Irina Aldana is
it's interesting.
A lot sharper. She's a lot more traditional Mexican boxing style. She's got a lot tighter boxing. She doesn't wind up on her shots as much. She probably doesn't put as much into it. And then on the other hand, you have Amanda Nunes, who's coming forward for an absolute bomb. So sometimes it's going to be a little bit of potentially a case of, is the hook going to land or the straight shot? Is it going to be the person with the finesse or the brute a little bit? And it's not to say that Amanda Nunes doesn't have skills. She does. I'm just saying that I think that Aldana's a little bit more polished, just in terms of if we're looking at it from a boxing sort of stand-up match, because
exactly, that's the thing. It can that might not matter.
because Nunes can make it a scrap, and if she wants to, she will, because she's physically much stronger, so she can take it there if she wants to, and that might affect the technique of Aldana. So that's something to look out for. I don't know what the odds are.
I do know that Irina Aldana, you look
at
at it from her perspective. She's been given this gem of a fight, which she isn't meant to have. She's 35 years of age. She's coming off a nice little bit of momentum. She's feeling confident. She's coming off good wins, stoppage wins as well. It's probably, realistically, the last chance in her career to really have a go at the title. And look who she's doing against, Amanda Nunes. She's going to be more motivated than she's ever been in her single life. Her whole career has basically built up to this, and Saturday night is going to be the crescendo. And she gets to take out the most dominant and one of the best women's fighters we've ever seen, called Amanda Nunes. And on the other hand, we have Amanda Nunes, who was meant to be going into her trilogy fight with Pena, gets a last minute. She's been at the top for a long time. She's got a new gym. The narrative is always there. So we can make this every time we see the up and comer, well, not necessarily an up and comer, but the challenger take on the long reigning champion. But can I see this where it is a difficult night for Amanda Nunes, and it is quite tricky, and they are the same age, and they have similar strengths, and they've got that sort of older girl strength. They've got that experienced veteran strength, and it's going to be hard to pin her down, and she's digging underhooks and just shucking you off, and now she's jabbing you in the face, and you've just had your head snapped back 5 times, and it's a little bit harder than you thought it was going to be, because she's a little bit longer than you anticipated, and you're not quite finding your range. Who knows? But what's your prediction?
Yeah, no, I'm gonna go with Aldana, because why not? I'm tired of picking Nunes, and I can. There's a path to victory there that I can see happening. So the more I think about it, I'm like, but where? I mean,
there is a path. I don't know where.
I think it was going to happen.
It's overgrown.
Honestly, I think it could happen quite early. I know that's a rogue shout, but maybe I don't think, because I think the conditioning wise, Nunes will take her there to those championship rounds, and obviously she's been there countless times. Actually, I say that. When's the last time she's been to the? I mean, she went to decision against Pena.
Gone to the late rounds, when's
the last time she's been to
Durandamy? In them. Yeah,
she went to decision against Durandamy, but
many of them.
Yeah, exactly. She just puts people away, but still, she's gonna have more experience with 5-rounders. But I'd like to see maybe an Aldana early TKO.
It's the intangibles that you can't account for. The intangibles on this one are Mexican heart, and that accounts for a lot. Honestly, it does. All of what I've just said in terms of it being
it does
the pinnacle of her career, the greatest fighter, all of that. And then it compounds because you add into the mix that she's Mexican. It's a dangerous prospect, because she's fighting for a lot, especially at the moment where Mexican MMA is just at an all-time high. You've got so many champions. The sport has never been in a better space. And for her to put another rose in the crown, if you like, in Mexican MMA and become a part of history and one of the greatest generations to ever be a part of the sport, and probably in their sporting history, if you look at everything they've ever done, there's not going to be a time where in one sport they're as dominant at such a high level as this. So she's got a chance to write history, and she's got a lot of her career essentially, and how she looks back at her career on the line. So it's a dangerous Irina Aldana. So saying that, I usually always go against Amanda Nunes. I don't know why it is. I picked Pena to win. I didn't.
You better not pick Megan Anderson,
but Pena I did, and we can talk about it another time, I'm sure. But there was a few things I
wait. Did you?
There was an upset on the cards, but.
Oh, actually, I just quickly, that guy that lost 350 grand on that? Do you remember that? I don't know.
There was randomly off. No, and then we'll just have predictions. I remember when I was in Australia, I was streaming. I was in a pub, and it was completely full. There was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, and I was by myself at this point. So I'm by myself in this pub. I've got a tripod. I've got my face. I'm on a TikTok live stream. And I've just got my face, like facing my own face, so I can read the chat and whatnot. So essentially, I'm sitting on a stool in a packed bar by myself with this tripod, speaking to myself. A photo of me like that as this. It was the John Jones fight, and the reason why I said that is because there was a fella in the live chat who had 10 grand on a John Jones first round submission, or something along those lines, and he won $100,000. How ridiculous is that? And I was just like, I don't believe it. You heard me?
That's mental. I mean, that fight made me just realise why the hell am I doubting John Jones? Because it's just John Jones. I should not have done that. I'm never making that mistake again.
That's
unless it's Thomas because he beats him.
I wholeheartedly believe that. But as I was saying, I always seem to go against Nunes. But I think this time it's just third round, clinical. I do think she's at a point now where she just gets it. She had that little loss just to realign her. She knows what she needs to do and where she needs to be switched on and what to give her full attention and how to dial in her camps. Like, she's a veteran at this point, and I don't think it's one fight too many. I think that she's going to be just a little bit too much in the striking in the third round and maybe just overwhelm her and get a TKO stoppage.
Yeah. I mean, I can definitely see that. I would not be surprised in the slightest. But I think it's not going to be like. I think most people are viewing it the same way. I don't think it's a whitewash bout as a lot of her other fights were.
You're saying
so? Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to it. To be honest, I think it's a good fight. I'm going Aldana because I'm going to go
What's
Aldana
your reasoning,
round
though?
one.
What do you think is going to happen?
I think that is possible. You never know.
Okay, all right, fine. So you're just saying she's going to go out
can crack. That's the thing. And why not? I would not a pick up, not a fight I'd bet on. But if we're going for picks, there's no stakes. Aldana is a shout.
That's an interesting call. So it'll be good to see how that plays out.
I'm going to get flamed for this.
And I'm actually jumping on. There's a podcast as well called Combat Kings. A few boys in South London, your way actually. They have a sort of little setup. Some of them train at GB Top Team. So next week I will be going and chatting about the fights with them. I'm going to be coming back and I'm going to be chatting with you. So I'm going to be dialed into UFC 289 100%.
Works for me.
There'll be some fun scraps on it.
I'm looking forward to it, actually. I am. I actually think, I know we said it's like for a pay-per-view, it's a mixed card. As an actual card, I think it's pretty decent.
I'm just sad.
I've seen a lot worse,
I enjoy
so
them
I'm
all
not,
to some respect. I get invested in the stories. I get invested in the fighters. I follow most of their careers. Some of them I interact with. You know what I mean? It's just you just get so. You listen to their podcast, or you watch this, or you watch that. And when you're immersed in it at such a level, you can usually find something pretty interesting with most of the fight, or most fight nights, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
So, nice. So that pretty much concludes the first episode. Unless you had anything on your notes that you wanted to cover before. Okay, nice.
No, I think that's all for me. Yeah, for sure. Thank you, everybody, for those actually listening and tuning in. Thank you. Check out Will's stuff. It's great, and he makes a lot of content, and I don't know how you actually managed to do all of that because your output is crazy, as I've said. But go check out his stuff if you haven't, and you're coming from my end.
That is Casuals Corner MMA, and then if you're coming from Leo's end, obviously you would already know that would be Leo Cooper. That's Leo Cooper on YouTube, and you should find a Casuals guide. You should find many Casuals guides, as many as your heart desires. Well, there we go. All the weight classes covered, so you can go and binge on them. And it's really actually good, even if you do already know them. It's actually a really nice little refresher just to scrape yourself up with the divisions, because so much happens in this sport that it's so easy to. I forget who was the last champion from 2-3 months ago. It all happens so quick and everything moves so fast that it's always nice to keep your knowledge up to date. So like Leo said, thank you for tuning in. Go check out stuff if you haven't already. Cheers. Drop a comment on the video if you're watching. Any questions that you'd like, please send them in. Don't be afraid to get in contact with our social medias. That's Casuals Corner MMA and Leo Cooper. We do indeed. Yeah, we
Big
do
plans.
have a lot of big
We've
plans.
got a lot of big plans.
We do, and we won't even talk about them. We'll just execute on them, and we'll send
We'll get
them
onto
out.
that.
So, as always, thank you for tuning in.